KRUSES, the show that absolutely nobody asked for. New positioning today. I'll take care of little Harlow, who just woke up from a nap. But we had some things planned, but I had an eventful day, and I want to tell you guys about it.
Yeah, we haven't heard it yet.
Well, I heard a little bit.
Okay, so I've been on the side hustle lately, just going after opportunities to make an extra buck like I always do, especially because 2020 was a slow year, and now we have a baby, and I'm like, what can I do to make extra money? To cut to the chase, somebody hired me all I knew was that they wanted to hire me for like 2.5 hours, 3 hours to drive them around the neighborhood. And it was like in a neighborhood that's close and I'm familiar with it. I'm like, okay, here's the rate and let's do it. So that's all I knew. I knew the address. So I pulled up at about 11. Actually, I figured it was in a Jewish neighborhood in like the Fairfax district, which is like a heavy Jewish population. And then I saw the name of the client and it looked like a Jewish name. I'm like, okay, cool. Good enough. Pull up. This guy greets me outside. The nicest man, like super jolly, like genuinely warm. And it was like refreshing. He didn't have a mask on, which was surprising because everybody wears masks right now in LA. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Are you Michael?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am." And he's like, "Welcome. Thank you so much." He's like, "It's a pleasure to meet you." And I'm like, "Yeah, man, you too." I'm like, he's like, "So do you know what's going on today?" And I'm like, "No." I'm like, but as I was driving in, I started seeing like kids in costumes. It's okay. I started seeing kids in costumes. Let's do a little baby switch. So I'm pulling up and I'm seeing like little kids in like Pikachu outfits running around. And
like it's Halloween?
That's what it kind of seemed like. And I'm like, strange. But I'm like, maybe this is in light of what we're doing. And then then he's like, "Yeah, so we're Jewish, if you couldn't figure that out." And I'm like, "Oh yeah," I'm like, I assume that. And he's like, "And today is a great celebration." And I'm like, "Cool." And he's like, "So my son is going to come out and you're going to meet him. And then you're going to take him and his friend around and they're going to be collecting donations for nonprofit organizations that we're very passionate about." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "Cool." And he's like, "And we're going to meet some extremely wealthy people and they're extremely generous today. And our goal is to raise money for these organizations."
Oh, so I thought the money was just like for them, like, give us money, but
no,
they're
not
actually
at all.
like donating it to charity.
It's people of their community going. So that's all I knew at the time. And I'm like, fair enough, let's do it. I was there was like little kids out in the neighborhood at the time. Mm-hmm. And I figured I was going to be picking up like an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old, like a kid coming out. All of a sudden the kid comes out and he's maybe like, I don't know, he's like a teenager. And then he has 2 bottles of wine with him, uncorked. I'm like, okay, let's go. I'm like, whatever. I sat there and processed it. And I'm like, I think we're doing something good. So hop on in. So he gets in and he's like, yeah, so we're just going to drive around and I know the houses to hit and let's just start. I'm like, cool. So that's kind of how it started. Me and this other guy. And he's like, yeah, my buddy's not ready yet. He's always running late. And I'm like, okay, no problem. So then we start. And then you just start seeing like, you hear like music, like Hebrew music, like playing in the background. And then I'm just like seeing cars drive around like fast and everyone's honking and cheering. And I was like, what is going on? And everyone's like waving and yelling stuff to each other, like being super friendly. Oh no.
Whoa, you don't like it. Okay.
May have to take an intermission.
Usually she's okay if she doesn't look at me, but I guess she just was not feeling that.
It's okay.
It's all good.
See, look, now she's with mom and she's fine.
So we begin the journey. He had a list, but he forgot his list of houses that he was supposed to hit, like the specifics, because like he had this go-to list. And he's like, so today is, and as I was like sitting there, I was kind of looking up. I'm like, what is the Jewish holiday today? And I'm like doing my own research. So it's called Purim, Purim, and it's a Jewish holiday which commemorates the saving of the Jewish people from Haman. And then in layman's terms, maybe,
this podcast is a mess right now.
English Feast of Lots, a joyous Jewish festival commemorating the survival of the Jews who in the 5th century BCE were marked for death by their Persian rulers. The story is related in the biblical book of Esther. So that's what they're like celebrating.
Okay.
Which is fascinating. But I guess they're just going around, and I don't know. I was just like in shock of like what was happening. I was
so
like,
basically the holiday is to go around and ask for money, and then they donate it to like charity.
yes, and he mentioned
But
something.
apparently they also drink and sing and
Yes,
dance and
yes.
wear costumes.
Yes, but I'm hoping that people that are watching this, I would like some like Jewish people to give us more insight because it's fascinating.
Sounds interesting.
And I was like researching it, but I just took some notes of like everything that was going on. So people were super bright, cheerful, reminded me of Halloween. And then they were like collecting up to like thousands of dollars at a time.
That's crazy.
Yes. And they said that it was the one time of the year that I guess they don't really believe in getting intoxicated, from my understanding, except this one day of the year.
That's so weird.
So this is the day, including like these, I don't know how old they were, but they seem young.
They seemed young.
So then we're driving. We're just driving, and all of a sudden, like, he's like, hey, that's my buddy, pick him up. I'm like, okay. So I pull over. He's wearing like a Make America Great Again hat, which you just don't see.
Yeah,
But I'm just like,
that.
and
Is he
then
just walking on the side of
just
the road.
walking on the street. This is like people everywhere. And he's like, oh, honk at that guy. And I'm like, what? And he's like, honk at him. We know him. I'm like, okay, honk, honk. And he's like, pick him up. And I'm like, he gets in like, hey. And they start speaking like Hebrew, and they start like, you know, dabbing it up. And they're just like all buddies. And I'm like, let's go.
That's crazy.
And then they get in the car and they're like talking about their pitch. Like, okay, we're going to meet so-and-so. Cut to the chase. Don't give him all the blah, 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 blah. Like, he knows that it's about a school. And then I'm like, you guys are just like making sales today. And they're like, yeah, we're making sales.
yeah,
and
they're like salesmen.
yeah. So like,
gosh.
that was amazing. And then he introduced me. I turned on the radio and I'm like, you want to listen to music? And he's like, ah. And I'm like, I'm trying to like make it comfortable. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, like whatever you want. Because at first we were driving in silence. And then it's the weekend. And I'm like, oh, it's a hip hop song. And he's kind of like, I don't know. And I'm like, no problem. I'm like, we'll turn it off. I'm like, if you'd rather drive. I'm like, is it a cultural thing? Yeah, I think so. It's a cultural thing. I'm like, cool. We won't listen to music. And I'm like, do you have music you want to listen to? And he's like, oh, it's not for everybody, but it's like we make our own Jewish music. And I'm like, dude, turn it on. Here's the aux cord. So he plugs in his phone, flip phone, by the way, which is you don't see. And he just starts playing like some pop, like music that I don't understand because it was in a different language.
Right.
But it was cool. And then I'm
But
like,
it's like catchy.
yeah, it was like a good sounding song.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, what's it talking about? And it was kind of like putting God first and not to have worries. So then we were listening to like good vibe music like the entire time. So that was fascinating. And then I was kind of wondering if I'm like, I know there's a lot of Jews in the neighborhood, but I'm like, are there certain people that don't really enjoy this celebration if you're not Jewish? Because it's like kind of mayhem, you know? And as I was sitting there, which was interesting, I saw a sign that I was sitting in front of a driveway and I had a little incident, you know, one of these.
Oh no.
So there was a sign that said, do not park in front of driveway.
Yeah.
No, do not block driveway is what it said. I'm like, totally understand that. I am blocking your driveway. If you need to get out, I'll get out of the way. I was sitting there with my hazards on.
Yeah.
But I was also conscious of the fact that I'm like working for this family and I'm trying to serve them. And that's kind of my priority. But I also don't want to be disrespectful. So I'm sitting there and I've been there for like 5 minutes. And all of a sudden I see a lady come out and she does not look happy.
Well, yeah.
So
Should've
I'm like,
signed.
yep. So I roll my window down and she goes, and I go,
She should have.
I said, hi. She goes, can you not do this in my driveway? And I said, what did I say? I said, I'm not in your driveway. That's kind of what I said.
Oh boy.
I know, but I wasn't trying to be confrontational at all. I was like,
I know, but you're kind of being smart. But
I said, ma'am, I literally kept saying, ma'am. I said, ma'am, if you want to leave, I will move out of the way. But I said, I'm working for a family right now. She turned around and goes, you're an a-hole. And then like stormed away. And then I said, that was really rude. And then she comes back.
You said that was rude?
Yes.
Like to her?
Yes.
Oh,
Well, she
that's
called
fair.
me an a-hole.
That's fair.
Okay, well, yeah, but
So then she goes, I will run into your effing car. That's what she literally said to me. And I said, ma'am, I'm working for a family. And then she said, you're an a-hole. And I'm like, well, I was going to work with you, but then you insulted me. She goes, I didn't insult you. And I'm like, well, you technically did. Long story short, she was irate. And then I'm like, okay.
wait, what's that mean?
She was extremely upset.
Oh.
Curious.
And then she started like ranting about everything else going on. So I'm like, okay, she's not happy. I backed up and left. But maybe that answered my question of.
So, are you saying it's because you weren't in her driveway, but her issue is that you were blocking the driveway?
Yes. Because at first she literally said, "Can you get out of my driveway?" And I said, "Well, I'm not in your driveway." And that's when she called me an a-hole.
Well, yeah, because that's peace out.
Take a break.
I think what provoked her to call you an a-hole was that was like a smart-ass response. I know you didn't mean it for being smart.
I really wasn't. I was trying to kind of be assertive. I was like trying to actually be assertive, but I was not insulting her. I wasn't raising my voice. I was saying ma'am. I was trying to like balance both situations. Well, that's what happened.
I'm just saying I think that's how she took it.
Sure. Well, then the other incident wasn't really an incident, but I was starting to get worried that like maybe I was going to get robbed. I'm like, we're sitting there with a bunch of money.
Oh, true.
I'm like, these guys are going in. He's like, yeah, we just made $1,800. He's like, it was worth it. And I'm like, that a boy. I'm like, you just closed another deal. He's like, yep, it was worth it. He was great. And then he's like, go. He's like, go west 2 blocks. Stop at this house. Stop. He's just like, stop.
Oh my god.
Then he jumps out and they like have their list and they're going up there and then you hear like music in the background and they're just like in their backyards and they're just partying and they come out with like more bottles of like wine or like another drink. They got more food. They're like offering me food.
That sounds like the job. That doesn't sound bad at all.
Oh no, it wasn't bad at all. I was like, I'm like, guys, I said I could keep driving for you because they wanted me to keep working.
Yeah.
They're like, we would usually work till 4:30, but I'm like, I got a wife and I got a baby. I'm like, I got to get out of here, but I'm enjoying myself. And so I gave him an extra hour. There was actually there's petting zoos in some of the yards in LA. There's like a small fence and then you see like llamas and sheep.
Why?
Because it's just like festive for like all the kids.
Oh.
So it was like amazing. I don't know. It was.
Sounds like a good time.
You'd see like Mercedes Sprinter vans with like party buses and limos and everyone's rolling their window down and cheering and.
Ayo.
Yeah, AYOO is right. So yeah, I had a good experience for like 3 hours of this awesome family who was like, I guess, just making the most of this celebration. And they were just positive and they were super respectful and I think they're just raising money for a great cause. Yeah. That was cool.
So when they were cheering, did you ever chime in?
I was just.
Did you ever get pumped with them? You're just like. Yeah.
I was like pumped the entire time. I'm like still energized. I was like waving at everybody and it was just like good vibes because usually in LA it's.
Not.
You know.
Not that people are like rude intentionally. They're just not very outgoing to like do that kind of stuff. Yeah, and that's what I asked him too. I'm like, do you know a lot of these people in this neighborhood? Is it pretty tight knit? And he's like, oh yeah, I know a lot of people and. People would just be walking and they would just yell something in Hebrew to each other. And I'm like, what do you say? He's like, he was just saying like, welcome and have a great day. And I'm like, cool. Cool. I did feel like I was getting some unique looks from other people because I wasn't dressed like everybody. Yeah. And I was just parked. But overall, I think it was a good experience. I don't know. It was just fascinating. And what, you made like $30?
I'm not going to say what I made.
Sorry.
I'm not saying. I don't disclose. No, it was. I worked for like several hours. Oh. Yeah. But yeah, I would like to work with that family. That's part of the reason why I like also to do side hustles is because I meet so many like unique people. Yeah. And I actually connect with them I was just hanging out with a family of a few people for like 3 hours. Yeah.
And you said you liked them. So.
Yeah, they're great people. And I just saw my phone. He just texted me.
Well, they probably liked you.
I think so. I mean, he said he's like, you were great. He's like, I'm so glad we got a good driver. He's like, it could have been a nightmare. And I'm like, I know, man. I'm like, I'm here for you. I didn't even tell them that I got in a heated battle with that lady. I was just like, let's go, guys. Yeah. Yeah, that was cool.
Heated battle.
Do you have any shout outs?
Any shout outs? No.
My shout out is to this family of a name that I'm not going to say. But they were an incredible family, and I'd like to learn more about that culture. And I'm just glad that I met a Jewish family, and I'm excited to begin that.
We're only at 15 minutes.
Yeah. But that's kind of all I wanted to say. I kind of want to I just wanted to get that out there of what my day was like. And I'm also going to look into those Jewish musicians and those singers.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you liked it.
I'll give you a taste.
Yeah, next thing you know, I'm going to be coming out of my bedroom. He's playing it for Harlow in the morning.
Right. Well, we'll wrap this up. Thank you very much for watching. Please give us a like. Please give us a subscribe. And if you have any insight into this culture, I'd like to know more. And shout out to those Jewish families in LA that are just living it up today.
Yeah.
Because that was awesome.
That was awesome.
We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.